here's how to look at a meta return on ad spend in platform and actually trust it and use it to be able to infer what creatives are working, what campaigns are working, and actually correlate that directly into the P&L. People normally sit in two different buckets. It's either attribution doesn't matter at all, just look at MER and that's your North Star, which I think is a mediocre approach. And then there's the other bucket of people who are living in probably 2020 and thinking that attribution actually works perfectly, and they're looking at the numbers and using it with credibility. The actual position that you should sit is somewhere in the middle. You can actually trust Facebook's attributed numbers as long as you can draw correlation directly into the P&L. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in this video. And it's really, really simple. I wish it was more complicated so that I could create some kind of aha moment in this video, but it's actually really basic, and 90% of ad accounts that I look at don't do it. And so what you're ultimately looking for when you're looking at a return on ad spend figure in the platform is you want it to be correlated to what is actually occurring within the business. Now, what metrics should we use at a business level to be able to draw this correlation? Well, I think the best one to use is acquisition MER, or shortened to AMER. Now, the reason why I think this is better than MER is because paid media for 90+% of businesses, its primary objective is to drive new customer acquisition. And so you want to be indexing towards new customer revenue and dividing by ad spend. Now, also worth caveating, you can look at MER in a percentage or you can look at it in an integer, depending on how you flip the division. In this case, we are looking at it as an integer. And the reason for that is that it directly correlates into ROAS. If you look at MER as a percentage, very helpful if you're a CFO, very helpful if you're a fractional CFO as well, because you can look and control the percentage allocation towards marketing over time, But if you're in marketing, it's actually not very helpful because it's hard to contextualize within the actual performance of the platform. And so if you're in finance, go use percentage all you want. If you're in marketing, I'd probably recommend swinging towards the integer calculation just because it's easier to conceptualize at an individual ad and campaign level. And that'll make sense in a moment. So we've got acquisition MER. What we want is we want this to directly relate. We want a direct to one-to-one correlation with ROAS in platform. And so this is an exercise that I do in pretty much every single audit that I record, which is that we calculate acquisition MER every single month, trailing over the last 2 years. And then we look at what is return on ad spend within the platform. And what will often end up being the case is you'll have something like this. Your acquisition MER will be a 2.5, but your return on ad spend is a 4. And so there's this immediate disconnect between the in-platform attributed numbers and what is actually commercially occurring within the business. And so we then have to step back and go, can we even trust this number then? If we're looking at individual ads and going, well, this ad's performing well because it has a high ROAS, it means nothing because the actual number here doesn't have any congruency with what is actually occurring within the business. And so the error bars that start to get introduced into using this as a core KPI start to expand, and it's kind of pointless. And this is an issue that a lot of brands fall into, and I'm recording this video off the back of an audit where I just pointed this out, which is that a client will get creative feedback on these creatives are performing well because we're running these different ad sets in a testing structure, and these particular concepts are doing well at a 6-7 return on ad spend, the others aren't. But once you dig a bit deeper and you do what I'm about to tell you to do, you actually find out that that's wrong. Those aren't performing well. And so the feedback that you're then going and putting into the creative team and the future cost of production there is all flawed. And so you have this creative testing framework and you end up in a position where you're just constantly testing all the time and nothing's really working because the feedback loop is based on data that lacks integrity. And so how does this occur? Why is there this difference right here? And it's really simple, and I've talked about it tons of times. It's that this actually drops to a 2.5 once you switch your reporting over to 7-day click. And all of the over attribution that's taking this up to a 4 is due to view through conversions. And so if you go into Meta, you click on columns, you click on compare attribution setting. And so let me just show you how to do this. So go and click on columns, come down, click on compare attribution setting, and then come through and click on 7-day click. May as well even open up incremental attribution as well. And then that's going to give you an accurate read of what your return on ad spend actually is once you take out view through attribution. And then what you'll end up finding is that that number should drop to practically what your acquisition mirror is. So you've now drawn correlation. Now the number that you're actually looking at in platform makes sense contextualized to the P&L. Now it might still not make sense, in which case you need to go one step further. And so let's say that even on 7-day click, this is like a 3.2. So it's still over. It's still over attributing. What is causing this divergence? Well, it's probably because you have a lot of returning customer attributed click revenue in there as well. And so what we want to do is then delineate that out. Now you can either do that through just clicking audience segments and looking at the breakdown, or you can actually pull existing customers out into their own dedicated campaign where you can have control over budget allocation. Let's say you do that, exclude existing customers from all your cold campaigns, pull existing customers into their own dedicated campaign. And now let's just look at those cold campaigns. And what you'll then see is 7-day click, cold only, it's now 2.5. And so you now have correlation between AMER and return on ad spend to the point in which we can start to kind of trust the return on ad spend numbers. Now, is this going to be a perfect science? No. Is there still all the flaws that exist with attribution? Yes. Error bars still exist here, but the error bars around the metric shrink a lot. And so when we're looking at this number, who knows what this is? Specifically, if you just imagine this at a campaign level specifically as well, like if a campaign says it's at a full return on ad spend, that could be at a 1.8, it could be at a 3.7. We don't know until we take the view through attributions out, because it could be massively over attributing or barely over attributing. And then vice versa, we can look at a tangential campaign that also has a full return on ad spend, but has a wildly different 7-day click return on ad spend. And so just bridging down to 7-day click and then taking out exclusions on existing customers is going to give you a metric that then makes sense in correlation to acquisition MER, so that you can have more confidence and likely better feedback loops when you see a particular campaign working, or you see a particular ad working, or an ad set bundled with a bunch of creatives in it working, that, okay, well, the attributed number on this actually aligns with the real commercial outcome related figure that's occurring within the P&L. Therefore, we can have confidence that it probably actually is working, and therefore we should do future production shots based on these particular creatives, and we should increase budget allocation here. Now on Google, this also translates into just segmenting your brand and your cold. And so rather than having a PMAX that encapsulates branded key terms, and the logic here is that we'll have more data potentially in the PMAX, or the logic is that we have a KPI that is set in terms of return on ad spend, and so we just have the PMAX consolidated. It's segmenting out and having the nomenclature at the campaign level of, is this an acquisition-based campaign where we've got those heavy brand exclusions in place, we're trying to not allow it to go and retarget. Maybe we even have audience delineation on a shopping campaign, and we're bid adjusting down. And so we're forcing the shopping campaign to just go after cold key terms and cold customers. Versus having a dedicated, let's say, shopping or a dedicated PMAX retargeting campaign, or a dedicated brand search campaign, so that we can actually then draw an ROI number out of Google simply by doing a campaign does not equal acquisition, or does equal acquisition, and then trying to draw correlation here as well. Exact same concept translates into pretty much any platform. You just want to figure out how to get the data to show you a number that is representative of acquisition MER, because it's always going to be the case that you're going to get massive over attribution. The same thing applies into TikTok, right? It's very unlikely that you're going to see a 4-5x inflection in performance out of a new sales channel like TikTok comparative to the mean acquisition MER that's occurring across the business. It's very, very unlikely. And so the reality is that when you launch onto a new platform like TikTok, you want to see the attributed number correlate as much as possible to the real ROI figure that's occurring across the business. And if it's not, change your attribution models. Look at how the different attribution settings are changing the figure. What happens when we implement heavy audience exclusions, etc. Because if you don't have that correlation, the attributed number means nothing. And that's where you fall into the camp of, oh, attribution doesn't matter. Just track your daily MER or your rolling MER over a 3-day period and just make budgeting decisions based on that. Rolling 3-day MER, bad. Pull budgets, good. Increase budgets. It's taking yourself way too much to one extreme, because you're foregoing the ability to make decisions at a more granular level within the account because you actually are completely distrusting return on ad spend. And then you also have the general issues with MER, which is that MER gets pushed around based on returning customer revenue, particularly if like you're in fashion and you have high returning customer revenue as a proportion of daily sales. And so MER is a metric that lacks specificity in itself when it comes to paid media spend. So I hope this is helpful. I hope that when I start auditing more accounts, I start saying 7-day click a little bit more.